Welcome back to Day at the Dude Ranch. We are on part 5 of this guitar. This is Rhonda. It's a 12-string semi-hollow body. And yeah, it's going to be cool. See me scraping the binding here? You've heard in the last episode I mentioned that I had some scraping footage coming for you. Well, here it is. It's hard to tell because I got this thing on super lap speed, but it looks like I'm going back and forth. I'm really only scraping one direction. I like to pull towards me when I scrape. I get a little more control. You don't have to worry about the tools sliding away from you and scratching the body. Now that did not happen for me at all on this. However, there are spots where I didn't like how the scraping turned out, mostly because of the way I installed the binding. I had the binding pretty much flush. At this point in the game with this kind of paint, I should have had the binding sticking out a little bit, so I shouldn't have rabbited it in as much as I did. Hindsight. So anyway, so here I am sanding, and then from this point, the sanding and scraping, I am basically getting it ready for another layer of clear coat, which I already knew anyway, but it's like I said, I don't want to scrape too much of that plastic off and get down below the painted surface. It just doesn't look well. So it's real hard to get everything all flush and not lose any color coat, which I ended up doing. So you'll see here in a moment when we hit the booth, we're going to actually spray a little more color on this thing. And here we go. So again, welcome to the Watch James Sand Show. Yep, sanding, scraping, sanding. This process didn't take too long, considering the outcome. It's worth it. You know, doing this kind of stuff is really worth it when you want a quality product. And again, remember, I'm just one guy. In the factories that do this, there's a person that just stands at a desk doing this all day long. He's got a cart of guitar bodies right behind them. And they got an out cart that they load up. So they empty the in cart and load up the out cart, and that's how they know they're done for that day. Me, it's all one dude. So now I'm sanding the body itself. Remember, we got a couple coats of polyurethane clear coat on here, and if you don't sand it well, the next layer is not going to stick. So we're taking off every little bit of shine, which is a good thing anyway, because we want this thing nice and level and flat. And remember, smooth starts equals smooth finishes. So that's what we're looking for here. Smooth but not shiny. So I'm sanding, scraping, scraping. Basically, we want the green where the green's supposed to be, and we want the pearly white where the pearly white part's supposed to be. They should come together but not collide. So much sanding involved, a lot of hand sanding. You can see I got a little green right there. A little more green there. The trick with using the scrapers, don't take off too much at once. Just take off a little bit at a time. And so that's why you'll see me scrape for a while, sand for a while, and then look like I've still got a green patch. Just because I'm just doing it a little bits at a time, and I want everything to be nice and flush and level. So what I'm going to be doing from here is see me one last little set of prep. But I don't know if I kept the footage of me putting the tape back on, but I did. Oh yeah, look at that. Remember the headstock? We ended up the last episode with the gluing the headstock scarf. Well, here it is. So taking out of the clamps. Yeah, that baby's all ready to go. But first, let's go get that body in the spray booth, shall we? We'll come back to that neck. Yeah, it's a beauty. So I've got the tape on, as you can see here, all that yellow stuff. I put that hobby tape, the pinstripe tape. And now I'm just rubbing it with DNAT. Even though I did spray it with the air hose before I left the shop, now I'm rubbing it with DNAT to get it all nice and clean and degreased. And then of course the tack cloth. And now this is color code again. So I've got about a half a bottle of green. I mostly want to get the edges because that's where I did most of my damage, but to blend in the color I am going to get a little bit on the face and back. And yeah, here we go. And then from here, I think the bottle's just about going to be empty on that spray. So then from here, now I'm going to pull the tape back again. And this time I know I've got a nice clean cut. Now what I'm spraying on here is what I call liquid sunshine. It's clear coat with a couple drops of amber. And the reason being is that if you look at that binding, now it's taken on some aged color. That's because we're using the aged white pickguard, but you can't get aged white binding. I don't know why. These factories that make this stuff just make it difficult on us. But with this spray on there, you see I can get it that color. And of course to blend it with the body, I'm just spraying it all over. So everybody's got a little bit of liquid sunshine on them. And then I'm going to come back and clear. So this is all clear now. And we're going to top it off. This might be the last coat. We'll see how it turns out. It looks like it's sprayed pretty well. As a matter of fact, yeah, it's got almost no orange peel whatsoever. A few pimples and almost no dimples. If I had a big buffing wheel, I would just put it right on the buffing wheel. But I am going to do some flat sanding, and you'll get to see that in the next video. And back to the neck. So here we are. We're going to cut this thing to shape using the bandsaw, and then we'll grab the sander. Power sanding this time. So yeah, again, you're watching me sand, but this time with power equipment, I hope. If you look at a lot of the old factory footage, a lot of the old early 50s and 60s guitar factories, they've had these things called a deadhead sander. And you can still get them. They're quite pricey. Some guys make them. I just use this thing. I don't mind going, you know, left to right with it. But the deadhead sander is actually the whole width of the neck. It's really nice. You could do them that way. I just don't have room. Now we get the slice, so you'll see that by adding that scarf joint, I was able to get about a 7.5 degree pitch here. And this just puts those tuners at a nice angle to get the strings to hold the proper tension. Even though I'm also using hip shot staggered tuners. So I could have left this as a flat face, but something about the angle I really like. You see that little back blade trick I did there? I'll have to show you that on another video. A little Jimmy DiResta action. Yeah, we're getting this all planed out. We're going to be gluing on the ears. I think that's what they're called. That's what I call them. And my planer, it needs some love. I need to get it to somebody to help me tune that up. It did an okay job, but I also found that Shinto rasp did a really good job too. And then of course I got my sand splat. So it's a chunk of walnut I had. I believe it's the same chunk that is the center block of that neck. So here we are doing a little shaping. I left this headstock a little shorter than my 12-string baritones. because we're making a semi-hollow body guitar, I did not want that headstock to be any heavier than it has to be. One more reason why I'm using the hip shot tuners. They're a lot lighter. They're the open gear. They're a lot lighter than a lot of tuners. We're going to have 12 of them, so it's like 2 sets of tuners out there. So you see that template I've got there in the lower foreground. It's actually a little longer than we're making this headstock. So I've got to use the template in 2 ways. I've got to tack it on going forward to get the round part, and then I got to tack it back to get the, or the other way around, yeah. I tack it back to get the round part, and then I tack it forward to get the little curves. So again, lots of sanding, lots and lots of sanding. Now I'm just tracing to get the basic width, even though we are going to shave that down later, which is why I put the ears on at this point. So because the way I use that sander, that's why I don't like having the ears on, because it's a lot easier to work with. So I got most of my basic sanding done on the neck before I put the ears on. Now I'm going to put the ears on, because at this point it's going to be a lot easier to sand that area. And here I'm just making sure everything's flat. Now coming forward a little bit, it's not so much, but that's okay because they're going to shape themselves right off. So you'll see a little gap on the top section. That's okay, because we're not going to leave that much walnut there anyway. But I really want it to be nice and flush going back to the back shape. You see right about where my left hand is, you can see that gap there. Like I said, that's all going to be cut off. So this is the fun part, juggling this, making sure everything sits nice and flat. I should make myself a jig, a gluing jig for this. It would be a lot easier. I do this often enough. Yeah, add that to the list of things to get around to. Okay, just clean up some of the drip out, squeeze out. I don't have to, but now what I'm going to do is a little trick that I learned. Take a little bit of that walnut sawdust from off the bandsaw, just rubbing it in with the squeeze out and pushing it back in. It just makes the seams blend in a lot easier. You don't want to do this unless you know it's perfectly tight and you've got a lot of squeeze out. If you try to do this ahead of time, you make it worse. Here we are the next day. I didn't have to leave it sit overnight, but I happened to be doing it in the afternoon, so it just made sense. Finish up, do something else, or go eat, come back. I don't know how I got this effect on my software, but I just wanted to zoom, and instead it did this funky thing. Hope you like it. Okay, so now we got it trimmed down on the face and back. Now we trim down the side. So I'm just using the good old-fashioned trim router bit. It just flushes up against the template, and then I take the template off and flush up against the route a little bit more. So there you have it. Really easy. Probably doesn't need narration. Some of you probably figured it would be better if I just shut up, but I'm not gonna. Okay, so here's another trick. See, now I could go in the center, those two there. I don't know if you saw the 2 top holes, but I went off to the side a little bit because I wanted to squeeze them in a little bit more. I don't really like that template that much. I'll probably just end up making it. What I'm doing here is I'm using my countersink bit just to kind of soften up the edges of these holes before I drill them to quite size. This keeps the chip out to a minimum. I wish I could say it eliminates chip out, but I have yet to find that. And again, I'm doing this all on hand drill because I still haven't got to my drill press yet to get that thing fixed. That is ahead of making any jigs, by the way, as far as pecking order of things to do. I'm just making sure these things line up and that they're right. It's at this point that I'm realizing I do need to trim a little bit more off the face and back, the headstock. I've got it about 16 millimeters right now. You know, with these staggered tuners, I could bring it down to about 13 or 14 millimeters, and they'll fit a lot better. But I just wanted to make sure that the holes were all good. Sometimes you do have to, when you're hand drilling, you do have to make sure that you get the holes lined just a little bit better. One of these days I'll have an oval drill bit made, and it will fix a lot of my problems. But that's the charm of not having robots make your guitars for you. All right, so here we are back at the sander. I don't know if you could tell, but that is a brand new belt, and that's a 40. So I'm just like really chipping off wood. And look at the hooks behind me. I bought a whole brand new belt set. So as I'm going through, I'm hanging them up. So now I'm on an 80, and just getting a little bit more off that headstock. I was afraid to do it with the 40. That was just too much. But yeah, I'm getting that down. Like I said, it's about 13 millimeters now, which is a little bit thin, but I'm also going to put a lot of product on it. 14 millimeters is usually optimal. And here I am just testing the look. I find, and if you're making your own guitars, you may find this along the way, just to remember what the goal is that you're after, and just take a look at things. So I didn't have to put that pickguard on, but I just wanted to. What I'm doing here is trying to get that heel down to size. And I use the pickguard as a reference. Now, if this was a type of guitar, like say a Strat, where you've got that big pickguard right next to the neck, there's a certain way to measure the height to know where you are. So I grabbed the pickguard just to give me a visual reference of that height, and ended up taping it on where it should be, just to check out the beauty of this guitar. And guess what, folks? More sanding. Yeah, that's right. So I've got the shape pretty much where I want, as far as I'm going to get with any machinery. Now it's just a matter of hand sanding. And I like to just cup the sandpaper in my hand and just go up and down the neck. I'm a guitar player, just like a lot of you. You know what a neck should feel like. So when I've got the sandpaper in my hand and I'm doing that, I know the feeling I should be having on that neck. I know what it should feel like, and if it doesn't feel like right in certain areas, then I'm going to come in and try to fix it. And I'm just making my way up the grades. Started here with 100 and making my way up to 220. And this is going to be topping it out tonight. This is already, I'm doing this after dinner, so when I'm done here, I am done for the day. Please click like and subscribe button. Come on back. You'll see me finish out this neck, finish out the guitar. Yes. Thank you.